And we've had to learn from them. And we've had then successes from there. But my point is you have to expect that you will run into failures, and you have to take those as learning opportunities to improve what you're doing. Okay? I'm going to give you a few things related to the HR specific dimension, because that's obviously the subject of today's session. The first one I would tell you that's really, really important is you have to get to know yourself. If you don't know yourself, it's very hard to know how you're going to complement yourself with other people. And by know yourself, it's very hard for anyone to really get to know themselves. The only way you're going to get to know yourself is by asking other people. So you have to find trusted people, mentors, teachers, other people within your family or others that have been successful in this area, and you have to ask them advice. And you have to try to figure out what kind of person are you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And one of the first things that I see happen with a lot of people who start businesses is they tend to recruit people who are more like them. And the reason why is because they understand themselves. They appreciate the values that they have and the strengths that they have. So they look for people who they can appreciate having the same values and skills, because that's what they recognize. The problem with that is that if you do that, you start polarizing the strengths and polarizing the weaknesses. And that's not a good strategy when you're developing a business. What you want to do is you want to figure out where are you really strong, where are you not so good, and you want to figure out complementary skill sets so that you've got a good rounded business and a good rounded group of people around you. And that's difficult to do because it's very hard for you to judge somebody that has the exact opposite set of skills as you might have, right? So let me give you a perfect example. Jen's probably going to laugh because I showed up at this meeting yesterday. So we can know what my strengths and weaknesses are. For me, I keep everything up in my head, and sometimes those wires get crossed. Now, what I'm able to do is I'm able to manage a whole lot of these things at once, but every so often when it comes to really precision and organization and everything else, not so good. So I need to find people around me that bring that sort of organization. I've got great ideas, I can make them happen, but I need people around me to bring the structure of making sure we're getting paid on those ideas, that we're billing for those, that we're not taking crazy ideas too far. So my business partner, which was a big part of my success, is an older gentleman who's been through EDS, big company structure. He's got 2 kids, and he's able to kind of bring the skill sets that I don't have and complement what I can provide. Does that make sense? So one of the first things I would tell you is you got to know yourself, and you got to figure out how to complement your skill sets. Those are really critical things. And to do that, you got to ask other people about yourself. I'll give you another pointer on the HR side. One of my key mantras is aptitude beats experience over time, every time. Aptitude beats experience over time, every time. What that means is if you find people who have the right mettle, the right smarts, that are more intelligent, more proactive, better than the others, you should look always to that than you should look to somebody who says, I've done this before. The I've done this before is a nice feeling because you feel like you can just plug this person right in and they'll do the task that you're asking to do. The reality is, if you've got aptitude, that person can adapt with you, with the business. They can develop more skills. They can become more valuable. You pick somebody with experience, that might be all you get. They stop right there. The moment you get them and you bring them on, they'll never be able to add anything new to the equation. So generally speaking, I would say, look for people with aptitude. Try to identify aptitude rather than try to match experience. That's a really fundamental skill that I look for in candidates. And it's tough because how do you define aptitude? You can easily tap somebody about experience. Have you done this task before? But it's much harder to say, how smart are you? How proactive are you? How capable are you learning new things and adapting to them? Right? That's a hard thing to ask. So the way that you ask for those questions is you got to dive deep in the interviewing process. You got to find something that people really love, and you got to dive and keep on asking questions about that thing that they really love. You got to ask 3 to 5 to 10 questions about that thing they really love. If you walk away from that interview and you've learned something new about something you didn't know before from that person, chances are you're in a good spot. That's aptitude. That's passion. That's somebody who can actually tell you something beyond what they put on their resume. If you ask all the questions that are validating what they have on their resume, so you did this, you went to work here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all you're going to do is validate what they've already put on paper. And chances are they've rehearsed those answers. They know how to answer those questions directly. So you're not going to get any benefit out of that particular kind of an interview. As a matter of fact, you might be misled in thinking they've got skills that they may or may not have. So you've got to dive deep into questions in the interviewing process. One last thing I'll tell you, which is I think a little bit different, is many people when they get into the entrepreneurial spirit feel that they want to jump right into being an entrepreneur. As you can tell from my life experience and path, that didn't happen right away. And yet at the same time, I've not had a bunch of businesses that have started and not succeeded. I've had one business, and it's been very successful. So to increase your chances, if you will, of having a business, a venture, an entrepreneurship business that is successful, I think there's a few things you need to consider. The first one is you've got to get experience. Experience is really critical. If you don't have experience, you're going to have to learn it by doing it. And when you learn by doing it, you have to be ready to have 5 different ventures going out, and the 6th one may be the one that's successful. And I mean this because statistics indicate that it takes 6 ventures to become a successful business person, right? At least 6, which means you have to go through and spend maybe 1 or 2 years each, invest tons of your own money, time, and energy, have it fail, and start over 6 times. So getting experience can happen that way, or it can happen by going, first of all, and getting a really good education that's going to increase your chances. And why is it going to increase your chances? It's going to make you think a certain way. It's going to give you a toolkit to communicate with other people. The more education you have, the more you're able to talk to banks and financing institutions, clients, hiring people, knowing how to validate people's skills. Those things are invaluable. So an education, a college education, increases your chances tremendously because it gives you a format of how to communicate with people. Another item is finding a mentor, finding somebody who's willing to give you advice throughout the course of your journey on the entrepreneurship project and giving you advice. Somebody who's been through it before. That's extremely valuable. And there's tons of people who are willing and love to share their knowledge about what they've done and what's made them successful. And you have to find those people, and you have to tap them for knowledge. And you've got to keep them in the loop with what you're trying and how you're trying it. Okay? And then lastly, many people look at entrepreneurship or working at a company as 2 polarized and independent things. I tend to think that's a little bit of a mistake. I think it's really great to get experience in companies large and small before starting on your own journey to business. And I think it's important to be honest with your employers and saying, in 5 to 6 years, I might want to start my own business. In the meantime, I want to do my best to make this business as successful as I can, learn as much as I can, get as much responsibility as I can, learn as many of the facets as I can. And I would suggest that if you go down that path, getting one opportunity with a big business, a big company that is a big structure where your work is likely to be very specific and narrow, and getting opportunity with a small company where you can see a lot of what they do. You can work on human resources, marketing, finance, all kinds of other dimensions, can give you a really good perspective before you go into an actual business. The big companies will give you a lot of structure and thoughts into that, and they'll help you understand what your clients might think like if you would deal with clients. The small business will give you exposure to a lot of different facets and show you how a functioning business actually does it. So I think those are really good dimensions to have.